Well, hello everybody and welcome. Thanks for watching. Today's topic is a little bit of personal history, a little bit of Los Angeles history, and in particular, LA radio, AM radio history. What I grew up on and what probably many of you out there who grew up in LA grew up on. I'm talking about one of the top Los Angeles black radio music stations back in the 70s when I came up in LA, KGFJ. Now, I listened mainly to two radio stations that were personal favorites of mine. Number one, I always just, as an aside, I always listen to KW, radio because that was my mom's radio that she listened to, all Spanish all the time. So that was another, to be complete disclosure, that was another radio station that I listened to, and I'm very happy that I listened to that piece of my culture growing up. But my personal favorite, two of my personal favorites coming up in the early 70s were 1580 K-Day and KGFJ. Now, KGFJ put out some albums. I had no idea that they even put these albums out, but I came upon them in my used vinyl hunts. KGFJ put out two of these 21 very important platters. That's what they called their big songs that they played back in the day. VIPs, very important platters. Now, KGFJ, I stumbled upon this in one of my used vinyl hunts, jumped on it right away because I was like, that's my station, man. That's my music that I grew up on. Very glad that I did. And as it turned out, what I bought was volume 2. There are 2 volumes to it, but I bought volume 2 in a volume 1 album cover. So I have then, like 6 months later, or even a year later, I don't even know how much time passed, I found volume 1 in its original volume 1 sleeve. So I have volume 2, volume 1, both, but I'm lacking a volume 2 album cover. Let's see what was on these. Now, these were put out in the late 60s. Los Angeles, 1968. The Vietnam War is on. Many sons of the black community and the Chicano community in Los Angeles were being drafted and sent off to fight in the Vietnam War. And this was the music that they were listening to on the radio that was dedicated to bringing their music, if you will, bringing a black music station, bringing black music for black LA residents to listen to. And of course, it was very popular in the Chicano community as well. I know, I was listening to it, and that's the part of LA I was in. All right, so 21 very important platters. This is what the rear cover looks like. They got the pictures of the artists here. And so these are top 1960s artists. Here's JB. Now, a friend of mine told me that KGFJ was the only radio station that played James Brown back in the day. That was the only place that you could hear him. Now, I didn't fact check it, and I don't know that to be 100% accurate, but two things make me believe it and pass it on to you. Number one, the word comes from a fellow KGFJ listener And he may recall that that's what they were telling the audience, the radio audience, that KGFJ was the only place to hear James Brown. And fact number two that makes me believe it is thinking back to the United States in 1968 and how divided racially the country was at the time. I'm pretty sure that that was the only radio station that was playing James Brown anyway back then. Now, the other nice thing, cool thing about this album here is that they tell you when the particular songs, the VIPs, very important platters, the album cover tells you when it was first played and how many weeks it remained on the VIP list. So, once again, this is just archival stuff. Now, why do I say that this is archival music history also? Is because there's almost no information. Once I saw that KGFJ had these compilation albums and I started thinking about making this video for you guys, I tried to do a little research and just so I could have more information to give you beyond, look at this album I bought. Because as I say, it's history. There's very, very little out there that I could find. Maybe just my searching isn't very good and you might find more info in 2 seconds. But I don't think so. It seems that, number one, there's almost no information about these albums out there. And number two, trying to find information about KGFJ, the radio station itself, again, almost no information out there, which I think is just, what would you call it? I don't know, a historical crime. Because this is important. This is important to Los Angeles history. It's the culture. The radio back then was on everybody's kitchen table. It was in everybody's bedroom. It was on everybody's transistor radio coming out and into their ears. That was the culture. And there's not very much to be found about the particular culture of KGFJ itself. So you LA historians, get on it, man. Get that information and get it down for us. One thing that I did discover was KGFJ's been around since the early 1920s. And they actually were the very first radio station to play 24 hours a day in the country. The first radio station in the country to broadcast 24 hours a day. They started doing that like back in 1928. Now, you might remember, those of you who grew up in those 70s, you might remember, hey, TV used to go to bed like after midnight. I don't know what time, midnight or 1 a.m. or something. TV would turn off. They would play the national anthem. How about that one? Did you ever see that one right before when TV would sign off at night? I think it was called Flight or Blue Flight, and it was like a poem. And they would show a guy in a jet, and they would read the poem about flying in the blue sky, something like that. I have that memory in my head. And then the TV station will go off. So even TV turned off at night back in the 60s. But one reason that I saw why radio did not broadcast 24 hours a day was because radio had these vacuum tubes. If you had a radio back in the 20s, it had these giant vacuum tubes like old-time TVs used to have. And the theory was people didn't know if the tubes could withstand being on and being hot 24 hours a day. So that was one reason that radio shut off. And the second reason was radio just didn't see that the advertising money was there. Like, who's going to buy advertising time for 3 a.m. on a radio station? So that was one of the other reasons why they couldn't convince radio to go 24 hours. But our hero radio station, KGFJ, was the first station to do it. 1928. Congrats to them. one more thing that I want to mention about these albums and about the cover itself, this very interesting cover that is very LA centric. If you know, these are the shapes of the Los Angeles city street signs, at least back then. And this is a contest winning design that KGFJ ran. I guess when they were going to put these albums out, they ran a contest, and who was it? I want to give cover idea conceived by Charles Anderson. So Charles Anderson, if you're out there and if you ever see this, your design lives on, man. Charles won $500, which was a pretty good piece of change back in 1968. So there you go. So and what that brings me to is that KGFJ, that also the big important thing that I wish that there was more information about this station archived, is because they were a huge member of the community. A member of the community contributed to their album design. And I want to tell you about one more album that also cemented in my mind, helped to remind me of how much of a huge LA community member they were. I even bought this KGFJ album. This is a third compilation album that they put out. And I bought this one even before I discovered my first 21 very important platters. I found this in the used records bin. KGFJ, 20 super hits, Radio 1230. I jumped on this. Now these are the soul music sounds that I grew up on. How about you? You recognize some of these titles? Listen, what's on here? Skin Tight, The Big Payback, The Want Ads. I'm going to put it in the Want Ads. Wildflower by New Birth. Remember that one? Ain't No Sunshine When She's Gone. I'll Rock the Boat. 5, 10, 15, 20. You know what comes next. Just awesome. Superfly. Show and Tell. Be Thankful for What You Got by William Devon. So this is like a 73, maybe 74. I'm trying to look on here. I wish I knew before I looked. But I love this one, especially, of course, because all these 70s soul, this is the 70s soul KGFJ that I grew up listening to. And why I loved it. And this right here is the most information that I could find about KGFJ. It's a double album. It's a double album, and it's got a write-up on the station. And for me, looking around for information about KGFJ, this is actually the most information that I could find. And I'm glad that I did have this. KGFJ Gives a Damn. Now, I was just rereading this essay right before I came on to give you this video. And, one thing I have to say about it is that you can see that this is not, as you read the essay, you can see that it's not a slick PR piece that's written by some radio station corporate exec. This is an essay from the heart about a member of the community. And some of the things that this reminded me of in here, it also reminded me, my favorite DJ that I used to listen to on KGFJ reminded me of his name that just had not rung a bell with me since the 70s, Lucky Pierre. That was my guy. If you guys listen to KGFJ, that might ring a bell with you. Lucky Pierre was the DJ. And in here, it talks about all of the projects and the involvement that KGFJ used to have with the community. Another thing that they talked about here was they put on the giant Watt Stacks concert that was in the LA Coliseum, which was like in 71 or 72. Do you remember that? Remember that album? There is not the album, but do you remember that concert taking place? It was at the LA Coliseum. It was put on, sponsored by KGFJ. They brought in big name bands, national bands, and big festival. And there is an album out there, a Wattstax album, which I am currently on the hunt for if I see it in the used bin. Real quick, let me shoot some of these photos. You can see this is from the inside cover. Those froze, huh? That's big old froze. So this, as I said, was really great informational for me. Good memories about KGFJ. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next time. Peace.